that shit could have gone absolutely any possible way. It was insane, dude. Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, the Tubs of the Club, brought to you tonight by Snake River Stampede Whiskey. We'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the show. We are the Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. That's right, your Idaho Vandals. I am your host, Dallas Hammer, joined, as most of the time always, by brave, bold, Bryan Marceau.
Dallas, great to be back. You and I actually don't get to record together as much this year. Schedules are just weird. Speaking of weird schedule, 11:30 p.m. when we're going live. This is as quick as we could make it back. Honestly, we probably should have sat this one out, but like an asshole, I told like 700 people we're recording tonight. So here we are.
Hey, you know, it is what it is. It allows us to leave the bye-week episode up for whatever we may wish, Bryan. And I'm going to leave that as much of the tease for next week's episode. So let's just get right into it, dude. Because like you said, we don't get to do this very often, and you and I have a tendency to just go back and forth on top of each other until this episode's an hour and a half long for being a reaction show that probably doesn't need to be that long. So without further ado, this is Around the Bar, brought to us by Hughes River Expeditions. Speaking of that, Colin Hughes in the comment section. Great dub. Let's go. Man, 38-28 Vandal victory. Jack Layne came back to start at quarterback. Bryan, that's I think that's where we start this conversation off with. Announced in the pregame, which patreon.com/tubs of the club. Those folks knew beforehand, well beforehand, that Jack Layne was going to be starting this game. But for those who didn't, Jack Layne was announced as the starter on the pregame introduction video board. And then we started.
And my God, man. I mean, hey, if you've been listening to the whole season, you know the basics of Idaho this year is strong defense, not very good offense. And like Patty's saying in the comment section, huge deal that Layne is back. And for today, huge deal that Layne was back. I think Layne took about 2 throws to find his stride. And everything that we had hoped in the preseason Idaho would be offensively with Jack Layne, that's what they were. Even with the injuries we've had this season, that's exactly what we were. Layne spread the ball around in a way that like we just hadn't seen as much this year. The Jordan Dwyer led the team with 4 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown, but we had 3 other receivers with 3 catches, including 2 tight ends. We actually had 8 tight end receptions on the game, which feels like it was probably more than like we'd had the entire first 8 games. The biggest deal offensively for Idaho is the middle of the field is now open. That was a big issue with when Layne was out and Wagner was in. Hey, Wagner played admirably for a backup, no put downs or anything. Jack Layne's a starter for a reason. And the coaches fell in love with Jack Layne almost instantaneously in X's first year. And you can see why. The guy he slams through those progressions and he just finds whoever's open. He's got great touch. Idaho's receivers had exclusively routine catches, which is to say ball right at the hands. And I mean, honestly, Layne's stat line, it might not scream at you like he's 7-28 for 235 yards and 2 touchdowns, but it was night and day. That Idaho can have long drives again, because even if they're not running the ball, Layne can deliver short to intermediate throws. He can cut apart a defense. He is as good as advertised. Idaho doesn't win this game if Jack Layne's not back. Layne getting back was huge for Idaho. And suddenly the Vandals don't necessarily look like a team that can't score. Like this now looks like a dynamic offense, even with the injuries.
Yeah, Bryan, this is a team that had almost 150 yards in the first quarter because Jack Layne is back. Like I mean this not as a shot at Jack Wagner or Nick Josephek or any of the guys that have played quarterback this season, but it is very, very apparent that Jack Layne is head and shoulders and nipples and belly button and waist above every other quarterback on this roster. As known loudmouth Elizabeth Hammer posts in the comment section in all caps, Jack Layne is my hero.
Is she related to Izzy?
I'm not sure. Maybe. Jack Layne 17-28, 2 touchdowns and an interception, 235 yards, 60% completion. Like these numbers are not wow, phenomenal, blow you away numbers, but we're talking an Idaho team that was completing roughly half of their passes before tonight. This is just, man, it's hard to, if you didn't watch the game, it's hard to truly hammer it in of like Jack Layne is just a completely different player in this offense compared to the rest of the guys. And you know, the rest of those quarterbacks are all younger than him. He's already a young guy, but they're younger than he is, and there's certainly chance for them to grow and build. But as Andrew, by the way, great to finally meet you today, man. Layne's feel for when it was time to tuck and run was so cool to see. We've been missing that part of the offense. Like it just felt like he was in command, Bryan. He scrambled out of the pocket when he needed to. Yeah, I'd love to see him slide feet first. There's time to work on that. He took a handful of shots. Collarbone looked to be totally fine. And honestly, it was that first touchdown he threw to Alex Moore that was just the difference in what Idaho's quarterback play was to where it can be, because it was just a nice little like arcing rainbow out into the corner of the end zone.
His touch into tight windows is impressive.
It's amazing. He hit Dwyer down the sideline. I think it was that 35-yarder, Dwyer's longest of the day. It was a sideline toss just like you'd see from, again, Wagner had made a handful of those, but Wagner's were tended to be just a absolute piss missile directly at the receiver. Layne was able to get enough touch on it to just drop it right into the breadbasket, which is, again, just a level that this unlocks for the offense, Bryan, because then you look at the running game today, and a dinged up running game had one of their best days of the season. And I think it's because Jack Layne was back there. You had to respect his arm.
Now, part of that was also it's because Eastern happened to be the opposing defense. But no, you're like, I look co-signed here with Layne under center. I mean, look, you can tell this. I completely understand why the coaches had been stoked about Jack Layne for a long time. I guess a different way to put it is the promise that we felt we saw Jack Layne show in those Idaho State games where we always had to have that asterisk of, hey, it's Idaho State. Like, we don't know how much this actually means. He looked exactly the same. He's hitting, there's no single target that Eastern could just key in on to try to shut down. And that also opened up some running lanes. I mean, like, hey, Day Buchanan. Now, look, Day Buchanan led Idaho rushing 8 rushes, 116 yards, buttressed on a 72-yard run that pumped that average up. But Buchanan looked good in his 2 touchdown runs. Art Williams. So, hey, Eli Cummings played, but he only rushed 7 times. Art Williams, the number 3 running back, rushed 11 times for 60 yards. Had some of that was Art Williams made some plays, but some of that also is, look, I mean, Idaho hadn't been effective run the ball against a lot of teams. Like, hey, they weren't that great run the ball against Cal Poly, because when teams were not really that concerned about the middle of the field, and they know that, like, well, hey, those like deep balls are essentially 50-50 anyway, it's pretty easy to key in on Idaho's run game. Well, that's different now, man. So, like, man, that concern we'd had, reasonable concern for so much of the season about, like, hey, can Idaho get enough offensively? If Layne's playing, the answer is yes. If Layne's playing, honestly, there's maybe one team offensively I like more than Idaho. That's Montana State. Well, they're like the number 2 team in the nation. They're better than everyone offensively, so I don't care. With Layne playing, suddenly this team can beat you through the air. They can beat you on the ground. The long drives are back in play. Layne doesn't beat himself. He's intuitive when to tuck and run. He is intuitive when to throw it away. He threw 1 pick, whatever. Quarterbacks throw picks once in a while. But, man, he was – and it was just a weird thing to see. I've never seen a guy with that level of touch with such tight windows, because he threw a lot of close passes where for like half a second I'm like, holy shit. But then it's like, no, this is what he does. His accuracy is pretty damn good at this level of football, and that's how he operates. He came to Idaho as a walk-on. I was at one of the opening recruitment events in Coeur d'Alene for the signing class that when Jack Layne came over. They were talking about turning him into a linebacker. So, hey, no one knew what they had, but I'm pretty damn happy that we got to see Jack Layne. And all that we talked about in the offseason of, like, hey, like, McCoy's gone, no big deal. No, we were right. No big deal. No, Layne's for real.
Yeah, Bryan, for me, it was just it was seeing what we had thought we were going to see out of this offense the entire offseason leading up to this, and the entire first week of the season that we talked about. Man, this offense is going to look a little bit different. We're going to see a lot more 12 personnel. The tight ends are going to be involved. The ball's going to get spread along to a bunch of different people. Bryan, 7 different guys caught passes tonight. Nobody had more than 4. Dwyer with 4. 3 other guys with 3. Like you said, 8 completions to the tight ends. Layne only threw 17 completions. Almost half of the completions went to the tight ends today. Like you had just said, the middle of the field has absolutely just opened up. There is a significant change in timing on Layne's throws to the routes to Dwyer. Yeah, there's a couple misses there that are still, I think, just going to get slowly ironed out. But it was pretty apparent, Bryan, there is just a massive difference between the touch and accuracy Layne provides. And then, again, what it did for, like, Day Buchanan had some runs called back off a penalty, but 116 yards on 8 carries and 2 touchdowns. Pretty impressive. Yeah. Art Williams, 11 for 60. Pretty impressive. Yeah, Eli Cummings was even 7 for 39. 5.4 yards a carry. He was obviously dinged up and didn't play a ton of the snaps.
Did he even play at all in the second half? I don't think he did.
I don't believe he did. We can check that, or we can at least try to check that. The stats page is a little weird at the moment, folks, so sorry about that. But Bryan, we're talking about an offensive line that's down many guys. We're talking about the 3rd and 4th string running backs. And Idaho put up 38 points, 235 yards through the air, and 252 yards on the ground. When was the last time Idaho came close to putting up any numbers like that?
Yeah, don't know. Also, like the Idaho receivers had been kind of plagued by drops. And one of the things I had said numerous times is, hey, some of it is dudes need to make catches, but some of it is they're not getting routine catches. Idaho had one drop. And hey, Jordan Dwyer would probably say, yep, should have had that. That was off his hands, whatever. But hey, college players do make drops once in a while. But the pervasive drop issue Idaho had, not an issue. If Layne's playing, it's not going to be because he delivers it. His location is it's flooring to see like the level of precision with his accuracy. And like you guys are hearing us talk in elated tones. Idaho had all Big Sky level quarterback in McCoy the last 2 years. It's not like we haven't seen a guy who can play. It's just the things Layne does, they're a little bit different than I've ever really seen from other quarterbacks at the Big Sky level. And just you can tell the dude is he's absolutely, like, in terms of like being a cerebral guy who can read the field, he's fast. He's thorough and fast and decisive.
It honestly, Bryan, it stuck out more to me when he missed what should have been a touchdown to Hamper. Hamper was on the left side of the field, open near the end zone, and he went to the other side of the field and chucked it up. I believe it was Dwyer, and he didn't come down with it. But that is a very rare thing. It just felt, watching the whole 22, you can see Layne's head moving as he stands in the pocket. He is actively looking for the best place to throw the ball. And that's not something you see a lot. Honestly, it's not something you see a lot in college. There's even guys in the NFL that struggle with this. To have a true quarterback now that can run the offense by going through read progressions rather than, again, loved McCoy when he was here, at a phenomenal couple of years. But McCoy's thing was tended to be, is Hatton open? Nope. Is Jackson open? Nope. Run the ball. Layne has not shown a ton of tendency to do that. When he gets out of the pocket or when he moves, it's because he's been in there for 5 seconds and he has scanned the field all the way across at least once, usually twice. It is so impressive, Bryan. The one thing I do want to point out, Super George 111 in the comments, Eck was as fired up as I've ever seen him. Eck honestly had a Petrino moment today, and I would love to hear what actually happened in I believe it was the fourth quarter. Might have been at the very end of the third. Right around there, though. Like, Eck went out there and started, like, he got in Layne's face. Taylor Cash mentioning, dude has some fire to him. Eck had to rein him in a bit to keep him from getting a penalty. Layne was right, though. Again, it was I think it was end of the third, might have been the start of the fourth. Like, Eck was out there shouting back at him and had to grab him by the face mask to bring him back to get him to simmer down. Like, it was nice to see that energy a little bit, Bryan, because I thought the dome was pretty dead. And the last handful of weeks, it really has felt like this Idaho team is just really trying to struggle to that bye. It was nice to see 38 points on the board. Guys are fired up. The sideline went nuts when Layne threw his first touchdown. Everybody's giving the guy, the props as he's walking down. Patty Frakes in the comments, AB sounded pretty emotional after the game.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah. I'm very interested to see what that one's going to be, if he's still feeling a little salty or not. But yeah, Bryan, I know we're waxing poetic here, but I really, for all of the things that we're going to get to about the things that could have gone better in this game, this, for Jack Layne's first game back after breaking his collarbone in week 1, and then realistically not seeing the ball again until, I'm assuming, practicing a little bit last week when he dressed, couldn't have asked for better here. Double-digit victory over a quote-unquote rival. Yeah, there's a lot of things to clean up, but the win's the win and you're on to the bye week.
Yeah, and look, of the teams Idaho plays, like, the two scariest are Eastern and Weber. To me, this was kind of a play. All of the games are playoff if Idaho's going to skip the first round. But this one, really, to get to that bye week and hope the defense get healthy, this really, to me, had a playoff feel as far as how much it mattered. Check it off.
You say check it off? We're going to get to best here in a minute, Bryan, but it's time to ask you the question I hate asking you. What didn't go well for Idaho today?
Well, that's not a hard question to answer, which I'll answer it after I remind you guys that, hey, Snake River Stampede Canadian whiskey, there's two options that you can go with: the entry level Stampede, or you're celebrating a big win. That's a small batch 1915 edition. Both are 3-grain whiskeys, 80% corn, 10% malted barley, 10% rye. Both have double barrel finishes. They're two of the best buys in Idaho state liquor stores. If you haven't tried one yet, go tomorrow morning to your local Idaho state liquor store, pick up a bottle. So what did not go well, Dallas? Well, honestly, I felt like this game was really weird in that, like, there were points where it seemed like Idaho might win by 40, and then there were points where Idaho seemed like they might lose, then where it seemed like it might be an OT game. Idaho had some big plays defensively that really mattered, which I'm sure we'll swing back to when we're talking like players of the game. But what did not go well offensively? Idaho did not stop Eastern at all. There were 2 total punts in this game between the two teams. Eastern Washington moved the ball pretty much however they wanted to. And honestly, had Kikoa Vesperis not been hurt in the first half, that's why he didn't return. Vesperis was shredding Idaho. In the little bit that Vesperis played, he goes 11 to 14 for 156 yards. Efton Chisholm, the third, best receiver in the Big Sky, was shredding Idaho's, injury decimated secondary. 7 catches, 114 yards for Chisholm, who also was pretty much dead silent after Vesperis went out and Jared Taylor came in. Jared Taylor's a running quarterback. He can kind of pass, but Idaho got virtually no pressure on the Eastern quarterbacks. And when Vesperis went down, and it was pretty clear that Eastern was going to have to rely on the run game to win the game, Idaho could not really stop it. Now, like, when Eastern got into the 20s, Idaho did stop them enough. Like, hey, forced a couple field goals, had a huge 4th down stop. That, side note, why in God's name did Best throw a pass there instead of from the, I have no idea. But let's just say Eastern helped Idaho's defense out a little bit with some questionable calls and self-inflicted gunshot wound turnovers. But the big thing that did not go well, and part of why just getting through this game to the bye is such a big deal, injuries are taking a toll on the Idaho defense right now. This is not the same unit that we saw against Oregon. This is not the same unit that we saw against UC Davis. It's not even the same unit we saw against NAU. Like, defensively, Idaho just need to get healthy. There are many ways Eastern Washington could have won this game because they moved the ball at will. It obviously didn't work out, but like, hey, if you're asking what went wrong, is Eastern looked like a top 10 offense.
Yeah, hitting the stats here. Kikoa Vesperis, 11 of 14 for 156 yards, completing 78%
in like a quarter and a half.
Yeah, in not a whole lot of play time. He played a little bit in the second half, but it was like a go in, be out for 1 snap, come back off and get his leg worked on. Like, it just was not something that he was consistently doing. So again, Jared Taylor came in and 3 for 4, 17 yards and a touchdown, because he's not much of a thrower, but 13 carries for 61 on the ground. Their top running back, Tuna Altair, 13 carries, 67 yards. They ended up with 215 rushing yards against Idaho. Like, they moved the ball pretty consistently. What was the most frustrating, I think, Bryan, was Idaho got to a couple of 3rd and longs, and then they handed it off to Altair, and he pulled the first down. He did it multiple times.
Eastern was 8 of 12 on 3rd down.
Yeah, thank you. That's even worse than I realized. Just not a great look there. And that does come down to some of those, the defensive line has been nicked up for honestly 6 weeks at this point. I think was the first time Eck had mentioned, like, hey, some guys are on snap counts. Like, we're struggling here. This bye week couldn't come at a better time, Bryan. You look at the good things that happened, which is Idaho did make a stop on the 1 yard line. With Dwayne McDougal, and I forget who the second guy was. My apologies, dude, for not remembering your name. Regardless, Idaho made the stops when it counted.
Yeah,
but there's definitely cracks there that you can see need to heal up a little bit. Hopefully over this bye week.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, look, what went well almost 100% tracks with Idaho injuries. So Idaho's look. Andrew Marshall did not dress, and we know that Abraham Williams is not going to dress. He's out for the year. Well, that means Idaho's down to DBs number 3 and 4 as being elevated to 1 and 2. And look, Efton Chisholm has been abusing number 1 DBs for his entire career. Idaho couldn't hang with him. Chisholm was just too good. And I truly believe if Vesperis had not been hurt, Idaho had no. Look, Idaho's been more susceptible to the pass game this whole season. That's been persistent. I honestly don't think Idaho wins this game if Vesperis stays healthy. He was shredding. The RPO game that Eastern had with Vesperis, Idaho had no answer for, and they weren't about to get an answer for. So, hey, Idaho got the breaks they had, and to Idaho's credit, like you said, Idaho came up with enough key plays defensively. And Eastern's a good team. They score 40 points a game. So, hey, maybe the glass half full thing is, well, they held a team that scores 40 points a game to essentially 2 touchdowns fewer than they usually do. So, don't mean to pile on. But you can track defensively the issues, and you can also track special teams. The kicking game itself is fine. No missed field goals. The 1 punt was, fine. And Owen Forsman on kickoffs, he has enough leg. That's fine. The Michael Wortham kick return for a touchdown was a 9-yard deep in the end zone kick. So don't want to touch the kicking game here talking about it, but kick returns, Idaho's down their top kick returner and top punt returner. And I think Marshall do a little bit of kick returning as well. Mm-hmm. Okay. So they're down to 3rd string kick returner.
I believe that's what he got injured on last week against Cal Poly.
Yeah. So anyway, Idaho right now is we're just not a weapon to on kick and punt returns the way Idaho previously had been. Maybe I'm being too harsh on Jordan Dwyer because he only got 1 punt return. So I'll take that back, but kick return not strong. And part of Idaho keeping Eastern in this game was Michael Wortham, who is a good kick returner, returns a kick for a touchdown late in the game. There's that. And again, I think that mostly tracks injuries for where we're having problems, but that matters. We've talked for week after week about how injuries are kind of piling up for Idaho, and that matters. We got to break this game with Layne coming back, but now that bye week for the rest of the defense seems like a gigantic deal.
Yeah, I don't know the exact specifics on a lot of those guys, but Dallas Afalava did not play today. I don't believe.
No, he played. There's just not a ton.
Okay. Again, if he did play, which I would trust you on that, he didn't play enough to make a noticeable impact on the game. Same with Malachi Williams. Guys are very obviously dinged up, and this is where that depth of Idaho has been very nice. It's been really nice that a guy like Zach Krotzer has started at the 2nd string and then become a starter and had some very good moments for the Vandals the last couple of weeks. But you got to start getting that room a little bit healthier. Hopefully, again, very late bye week here. This should hopefully help. Again, I wish we had some better information on that, but that's what we're looking for. I do want to give a shout out to Patty Frakes. I think the worst thing possible for Eastern was having success on the ground. They totally abandoned the intermediate pass game after they got 2 first downs rushing. And Patty, that's where part of this fear from Bryan and I comes. Honestly, if the coaching staffs were switched, I don't think Idaho wins that game. Honestly, if it was Jason Eck coaching against Jason Eck, I think that the Jason Eck-led Eagles probably win this game over the Jason Eck-led Idaho team. Again, you take the win, as Simon Miller was saying in the comment section. Hey, you take the win and run, just like getting a C on a tough test. You get healthy and you make your run. That's absolutely, at the end of the day, 100%. Hey, this was a great win. Idaho put up more than 30 points, 500 some yards of offense, or right around there. Hey, awesome. Love that. Exactly what they needed. But again, you can still see the cracks of this wasn't a perfect game. You don't want to be playing perfect football in October anyways. You want that to be perfect in January. But there's definitely places to improve from here, Bryan.
Yeah. It's actually kind of funny, just the tone of this with how this is just a complete inverse of what every single episode we've recorded has been. is now suddenly like even with injuries offensively for the remaining schedule Idaho has. Are you anxious at all? No, not like not 1%.
I mean, I'm about 8% anxious. And that 8% is, I don't know what Jack Layne's collarbone looks like. If there's a titanium rod in there, I'd probably feel pretty solid. If it's still bone, we've seen it break once this year. So there's that little bit of anxiety of like, wow, this is a completely different team with Jack Layne. But assuming that Idaho stays healthy-ish, or at least healthy enough at the quarterback position and enough of the skill positions on offense, my concerns are all gone, Bryan. This team should win realistically every game from here on out. I'd feel a little bit different about that Weber game if it wasn't a home game, but Idaho's going to be favored in all of these. As Sean Kramer in the comment section, no Jack Layne, I'd be shitting myself at Weber State. Wagner can handle Portland and Pokey State.
We'll stay. Idaho State's looking frisky. We're not previewing that game right now, but Idaho State's looking. They just beat Sac State. They're better. It's a better team than they were before. Which is all to say, Idaho being able to score the ball is a huge deal. Like my thing, I've been just hammering week after week is margin for error, margin for error, margin for error. When you don't score, you don't have any. I'm fine throwing out weeks 1 through 8 now of what Idaho is offensively. I think this is what this team did. Like, ignore the results that are variable always week by week. What this team did this week, especially hit it, seeing Idaho hit the middle of the field. God, it felt so good to see those passes land in the middle of the field in the way of, like, look, there were more middle of the field completions today than the entire season previously. Like that like, hey, jury's in. Yep. But then also to see Mike Martinez used, what he looks like he could be. Between Mike Martinez and Alex Moore, Idaho has 2 huge end zone targets as tight ends that I think a lot of FCS teams are just going to struggle to contain. Never mind guys like Mark Hamper, different guy. Looks like a different guy with those routine catches come in. We know Jordan Dwyer's good, so like there's nothing new there. He's been good for 3 years, but now Idaho looks like it has some weapons now that it didn't look like it had for a handful of weeks, because it looked they just were not. Idaho couldn't showcase that the short to intermediate pass talents. That really is the direction this team feels like it was recruited around, which might be a different way of saying. Now we can see what a Layne offense does. Like, if Idaho wins out, Jason Eck should be coach of the year. I don't care if Brent Vegan goes undefeated. If Idaho being able to piecemeal together as many wins as they did, with having to having to deal with a bunch of kind of mismatched parts because of what this team is recruited to be in the first place. Maybe this is a time for everyone, myself included. Like, we've mostly said good things about the coaches on this show because I think you should. Yep. I think there's a lot of people who are frustrated. A lot of what we saw offensively for weeks 1 through 7 should give themselves to go back in time and say, like, hey, dude, I was wrong. This is just what happens when things are mismatched because of injuries. Like, if this is what we've been seeing for, like, since week 2, I think every Vandal be like, man, this is a fun ride. I hope we get to keep. I really want this ride to keep going through December.
Yeah, Bryan, the minor bit of caveat I would give there is the offense is certainly not going to be perfect now that Jack Layne is back. There's still going to be some of those, what the Marts plays where, why the fuck is Tony Harsty throwing a ball down the field when Jack Layne is still on the field? That's probably going to happen at least once, because that's just like to slice it up every once in a while.
I will say there were no wide receiver passes today, which meant today was a good day.
So yeah, there's still a chance that we're going to see some of that, because that's just the thing Idaho has a weird hard on for. But yeah, Bryan, Idaho held the ball for 33 minutes. Haven't seen that in a very long time.
Had a that first quarter was fast.
Yes, it flew by, which was insane.
Partially because Idaho couldn't stop Eastern.
Well, I mean, yes, but I want to give another shout out. James Jacobs in the comment section loved to see the 8-minute drives again. Like, This is what Idaho football felt like the last 2 years with Giovanni McCoy at the helm. The offense was on the field and in control most of the time. Super George 111. I'd hand off to Martinez Derry to try to tackle him. If he didn't have all the injury problems in his past, I would agree with you. I don't know how many shots he's going to be able to take before, just the odds are not in his favor. I will say in your next comment, Day looks like the future at running back. Man, Day and Art Williams, I am thrilled. That is going to be a pretty solid stable. No concerns from my end after going from Anthony Woods, best running back in the Big Sky, Nick Romano, afterthought sounds mean, but he was an afterthought on this team for 3 full seasons before coming back his senior year and getting the playing time. It looked good, but was certainly not like the explosive, ball busting running back that we were maybe hoping for. And now you got Eli Cummings back. He's looked pretty damn good. Nate Thomas has been, when he was healthy, was just running people over left and right. Day looks like he can pop any play at any time he needs to. And then again, Art Williams is averaging like 6 yards a carry. Like, there is a lot more depth here, and that does help that your offensive line depth has also massively improved because Bryan, they're down to third string guys in certain positions, and the offensive line is still performing really, really well. Jack Layne did not take a lot of hits, only 1 sack tonight for what has been Idaho's weakest link in the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, you're right. Like, especially you're talking about O-line development. I mean, you're right with injuries, with all that we. I mean, look, hey, this is just Idaho's not Jekyll and Hyde team, but like that's what this game was. Of like, hey, Idaho answered a lot of offensive questions, and also showed that the defense is just ready for a bye. But that includes the O-line, where what Jack Layne took 1 hit. Which ended up being called I don't remember what the penalty was. It wasn't targeting, but it was like roughing the passer. Because I believe the guy, I didn't actually see why that happened because I was watching watching the pass. But yeah, no, I don't know. Like we have a bye this week, and I feel like that is a huge deal for everyone. Okay, Patty Frake saying Layne actually took a lot of hits. My bad. Just from what I was watching, I felt like Layne I didn't feel like Layne was running for his life by any means. But you're right, took a few hits, and then like the not sliding thing was confusing for me. On the few rushes he had, but I don't know, dude. I felt like Idaho escaped with a win because there were a lot of ways. Like, if we replayed this game 10 times, there's no way Idaho goes 10-0. Like, there's a lot of ways where Eastern could have put their foot on Idaho's throat. There's a lot of ways where Idaho made some plays that just mattered in a time that were just timely, like that 4th down stop you talked about. I believe it was Blendman was the other guy who helped bring down the receiver. But I don't know, dude. I honestly feel pretty damn happy for Idaho. We're sitting at 6-3 now. Idaho's sitting at 6-3. If Idaho can get through, if Idaho's 9-3, there's no way that the Vandals are not hosting a 2nd round game and completely skipping on the first. It's 1 week at a time is all that Idaho needs. But I got to tell you, like, there's some critique in the comment section, which I don't disagree with, about the dome not being electric. It was full, but like, it wasn't as energetic as I've seen in some games. I also think like at least not 0% of that was also people felt comfortable with what Idaho's doing offensively with Jack Layne there. And that I think a lot of people who've had some anxiety throughout the season for Idaho were able to kind of exhale a lot of that away. That's kind of my thematic takeaway here.
Yeah, I was telling Izzy throughout most of the 4th quarter, she was still in a little bit of the PPPTSD, the PPPTSD. And I was like, look, Idaho's up 3 scores. Like, they could screw some things up here. And yeah, they allowed that huge kickoff return and let Eastern move down the field pretty easily on another drive. Like, yeah, certainly wasn't an easy 30-point victory, but again, they got it done, and realistically, the game wasn't that much in question in the second half. Like, outside of when Idaho finally got up to 24-13 when it was an 11-point game, that was really, at that point, it was just about it. Like, I know that, again, they lost by 10. Yes, Eastern certainly had chances, but throughout most of that second half, they needed onside kicks to be able to truly make a stand to win that football game. So that is a very good point, Brian. I in the moment was pretty disappointed in how quiet the dome felt for being as packed as it was, but that's also a very good point. Like, this was, I'm not going to say an easy wire to wire win, but it also wasn't a game that I was shitting down my pants in the last 3 minutes wondering if Idaho was going to blow it. Like, it's just a pretty confident win, I guess, is maybe the best way to say it. Yeah.
I mean, like, you're ecstatic that the Chisco Cup stays in Moscow, right? I actually completely forgot about the Chisco Cups when I stayed for the celebration. I kind of I see your reaction. I like that trophy. I love them just taping the new winners on there.
I think that I hate the name. I really hate the name. Like, the Money Cup was right there. If you were going to take half of the team's names, shout out to Brian Cobb for giving me that one. Or you could have called it like the Zips Bowl, or like, I don't know. There's so many things you could have done that were so much more creative than Chisco.
I like it.
Brian, you're an old man.
I am.
I don't know what that has to do with this. It was just like a pejorative insult I was just kind of throwing at you.
Dude, I am. I like look, I like that it's not polished. Like, it fits Jason Eck relative pretty damn well to me.
Yeah, the only polishing is the knobs in the Discord. With that said, Brian, speaking of polishing knobs, if you're looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, you're probably looking for some knob polish too. But what you're really looking for is Hughes River Expeditions. They've been Vandal owned and operated since 1976. They're right here in your backyard. Do not look past them, because they are going to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the middle fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway. You can even check out special trips like one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, and guys, the same thing I say every week. Fish the most remote stretches of river in the entire United States. Just bring your clothes and HRE will handle the rest. Like Turner Webb says, the pristine bitches. They'll even bring those in for you if you're really wanting them. I know Grandpa Brian's got a special on them. Just give him a shout. Give Colin a shout. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call him now, 406-540-4450. Again, since I screwed it up the first time, 406-540-4450. Or check him out at hughesriver.com. Brian, your player of the game on offense.
Jack Layne. I mean, I don't know what other direction you could possibly go. One where you spread the ball around, there's not just one guy who pops off. But no, like, Jack Layne's the story of this game, and Jack Layne's the offensive player of this game. I don't think it's remotely close. Layne being back was the difference in Idaho offensively, and it wasn't just it wasn't just like, let's say, early where Eastern maybe wasn't ready, for the kind of pass attack that Layne has. I don't know how Best could not have maybe heard it, because honestly, I was told Jason Eck was telling people Friday night in the parking lot that Jack Layne was going to start. This was not, let's say, a rumor. We told people in advance of that, of course, but like I said, Layne's a story. Layne kicked ass. A couple moments, whatever. I gotta say, this completely 180s my outlook and expectations for Idaho as far as getting through these last three more weeks with wins, and it's because of what Layne did today.
Yeah, honestly, we try sometimes to get things laid out and give multiple guys shout outs, but as Simon Miller says, agreed. Jack Layne, Crewhead 76 puts it perfectly. Jack Layne, period. Like, yeah, day, great game, 116 yards. Art Williams leads the team in carries. Dwyer, 78 yards and a touchdown. Like, there are guys that had good performances. The offensive line, again, ran for 252 yards behind him. So, a lot of guys that put in pretty good performances, but it's Jack Layne. Today, this game was all about Jack Layne. The offense just looks different when he's out there. The ability to go from essentially 10 personnel. It was Alex Moore was out there, but he was lined up as a wideout. And then immediately go back into 12 personnel the next play, and it just feel natural and like everything is flowing. There's positive yardage on every play. And it comes down to the guy who's got the ball in his hands on every single play. Jack Layne absolutely killed it today. Defensively, Brian, I feel like we might have...
I do need to say one more thing. I want to acknowledge Patty Frakes in the comment section saying, well, Brian, let's just say everyone has been able to expose EWU over the middle, LMAO. Okay, Patty, I give you that. This is the same Idaho team that scored 6 points in the first half against Cal Poly. Like that, I accept there's some limitations of what you extrapolate from Eastern, but this is an Idaho team who wasn't able to expose anyone over the middle at all with Layne out. That's part of the problem was Idaho's issue offensively. They couldn't throw the ball to 70% of the field. That's not that hard to game plan against, and go look at Idaho's offensive stats from that time. It tells you everyone from Cal Poly on was able to handle that. Layne was the difference. So my defensive player of the game, I'm going to go Dwayne McDougal, although Sean Kramer, defensive MVP, Aaron Best for that play call on 4th down. Sean, maybe that's the direction we should go. No, McDougal had a huge stop. Did McDougal have a fumble recovery as well? Or was he involved in forcing the fumble?
He forced it.
B-tch recovered it.
I think, yeah.
B-tch made the recovery. I'm going to go Dwayne McDougal. Now, I will say, I think it's kind of hard to pick a standout defensively because Idaho forced a single punt. Idaho did not win this game because of their defensive outing. Their defense did enough, just like for other weeks. Idaho offensively did enough for the win. But yeah, I'll go Dwayne McDougal.
Yeah, I mean, again, in a world where we're not going to give this to separate players, I'd give it to McDougal as well because that was the play of the game. Blendman also was in on that play, so another guy to give a shout out to there. In the comment section, the Aaron Best comment was fantastic, but a couple different folks pointing out Tommy McCormick had 18 tackles. So, I mean, again, no turnovers from turnover Tommy, but 18 tackles is certainly nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
Jackson Eck also double digits in tackles. Patty Frakes also mentioning Zach Johnson had a really underrated game. I thought Zach Johnson had a couple good stops. Definitely growing into that linebacker role more and more. As Patty mentions, the defense only gave up 21 points. Like, they did only force the single punt, but they did only give up 21. 7 of that was that kick return touchdown. So
now, Patty, yes, but Eastern also lost any semblance of a pass attack when Vesperis went out. So, like, again, I give you this point, but the Eastern, before Vesperis went out, Eastern looked like there was no way this was going to be anything other than a 3-point ball game.
Mm-hmm. Very true, Brian. Your final thoughts, Brian? Anything we didn't cover in this last?
Yeah, and I want to throw it to you. Aaron Best will always hold a special place in my heart for that nail in the coffin that not even Terry Golick could ignore. And Terry Golick, we've covered, she can ignore a lot. Aaron Best to me, he is a fun Big Sky story. He's been at Eastern for a total of 28 years. He's a guy who just interpersonally, he's fun. He's a fun dude. I like Aaron Best. I don't think he's coming back. I just don't think you can. They're 2-6. Honestly, I actually saw this cat behind shoulder. I saw the Eastern AD I was getting gas on the way out, and I told him, like, not being funny, like, yeah, you guys have like the best 2-6 team in the history of football. And he said, yeah, thanks. That actually doesn't make me feel that much better. which was not my goal, dude. I don't work for you. But I just want to ask you, because you also have a little bit of ties to Aaron Best from your old journalism days. It feels like Aaron Best, there's no way Eastern can have Aaron Best come back. But to me, this isn't a Ed McCaffrey story where like people were dancing on Ed McCaffrey's grave getting fired because he never should have got a job in the first place. And he looked like he didn't take it seriously. Like the Big Sky is a better place without Ed McCaffrey. I don't know if the Big Sky is a better place without Aaron Best, but I just think it's quite obviously time. As
a fan of a different school in the Big Sky, I hope Aaron Best is there for a very long time. On a serious note, I really like Aaron Best. Aaron Best, the person, was always really good to me when I was in the media. He was one of the few coaches in the media that cared to ever learn my name, which was the weirdest thing when you show up at practice and one of the coaches yells at you and waves at you. Like it's really weird. So it's a bummer, but this really feels like it's time, Bryan. He's been there since 1996. He had 1 year in Canada between all of that. Otherwise, he's literally spent virtually his entire life in Cheney, Washington. And it just feels like it's time, man. Taylor Cash in the comments, Gary flashed us. Yeah, sorry for anybody that saw cat butthole on the screen. This is what happens when it's Tubbs way after dark or Tubbs morning, I guess. This is the morning show now.
36 live listeners.
Yeah, but Bryan, looking at Best's record here before this year, his years in charge: 7-4, 12-3, 7-5, 5-2, 10-3, 3-8, 4-7, and now 2-6. Like it feels like the drain has been circled for the last 3 years, and it's time to go. Maybe we see Beau Baldwin come back. He's up in Canada. Maybe he wants to come back stateside.
Well, as you showed to, did you post that in the Big Sky Twitter or in the Discord?
That was the Big Sky Twitter.
Yeah, the program had a misspelled Beau Baldwin as the head coach listed for Eastern. I don't have anything to add. Like that was a screw up that means nothing other than I was actually kind of impressed, like the double typo of the wrong coach with the wrong spelling of his first name.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I just think that, like you said, I think it's pretty clear that that's where the route Eastern's going to have to go. And I don't know. I think we've been open on the show. We want Aaron Best to get his ass kicked when he plays Idaho, but otherwise, like he's a cool story.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He's fun. He's funny. Like, but hey, sometimes that shit doesn't work out. Like Mike Riley was a really nice guy, and what did it get him? A couple okay years at Oregon State and fired from Nebraska real quick, and a couple years in the NFL nobody really gives a shit about.
I mean, like Best also did make a title game. So like I don't want to, like, part of why he's still there is because he's had success. Like even this Eastern team doing what they are, we've had some worse Idaho teams we've lived through. We've had worse teams that we had shows about here.
Many of those, especially when you bring in the basketball team.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I don't have anything else to add. I think that's a relevant takeaway from this game of like kind of the two stories are Jack Layne came back and Aaron Best. It felt like some dumb decisions cost Eastern this game that. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of just been the Eastern thing this year, though. Like they're not a bad football team. Like honestly, Idaho had really not that much answers for Idaho for Eastern defensively, and that is certainly not close to the least. I mean, to the least talented team that Idaho has played. Honestly, I say talent wise, they look pretty damn close to Cal Poly. With it, as we've stated, one pretty big variable.
Mm-hmm. The final cherry on the top here. Patty Frakes, Best's biggest downfall is he failed to hire good coordinators. I mean, I would say that's quite obvious, and butted heads with the good ones. Yeah, Ian Shoemaker had that offense humming for a while. Don't really know whatever happened to him, but yeah, not a great time to be a an Eastern Eagle. Taylor Cash in the comments, that's the biggest resource problem at Eastern. As following Eastern from afar, I hope they figure their football program out. I think it's a little bit more fun in the Big Sky when Eastern is good, especially when they're good and they're scoring 40 points a game. But man, Bryan, I look at this and yeah, there's certainly warts on this victory, and I wouldn't say that Idaho has had a perfect game at any point in this season so far, but there is nothing I'm leaving tonight with other than, all right, Idaho's got the dude back. The dude might be able to take this team pretty far. That first round bye is certainly in play, and maybe some home playoff games. And who knows where the sky really is when Jack Layne's around.
Yeah, I mean, co-signed.
Yeah. So, final note. Crewhead 76 had Akey hired better coordinators, he would have done better. Axman and Kreiner were shit.
Yeah, I feel like Akey had a couple others just too.
Yeah, I mean, there was.
Like, I'm not disagreeing with that point. Like,
no, the great
that
point.
Was not the only issue.
The Akey wasn't a great recruiter. Wasn't great in game either. But then the recruiting really took a hit when the conference fell apart, and then he's got to recruit a whole bunch of troubled kids that bunch of problems and doing cocaine in the locker rooms and all the awful things.
Oh, that's a problem.
The only Coke I like is Rocco Coke, Bryan.
Yeah.
Because I'm a Pepsi.
Can I say like one more takeaway? I actually kind of like that Idaho now does have, because of injuries. That's why Coke is seen the field, but Coke is a rusher who can throw like a nominal short pass once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's going to matter at some point throughout the season. It did a few times tonight.
Yeah. And
Idaho having that package, which they do differently than Eastern. The other frustrating thing, if you're an Eastern fan, is their ability to have like Vesperis kicking ass and then yank him for a while to get Taylor to get his touches. Then no one has rhythm. Yep. Idaho doesn't do that. There's clearly a couple. It's more like the Zach Bohr setup of a clear set of plays, clear package, where Coke comes in, but it's situational. So there isn't really any lost rhythm. He's going to be back for like 2 plays and then come back. I like that Idaho has figured that out. I feel like it's just for a team that was struggling to score, they needed every wrinkle. But now if this is a team that doesn't struggle to score, I'll still take every wrinkle I can.
Yeah. Bryan, there is a legitimate chance that we're talking about this weeks or months away from now, where we're going to be talking about, hey, remember that 7 weeks of hell Idaho went through, cycling through all these quarterbacks, trying to figure out anything they could to score points? Well, hey, guess what? They found out a whole bunch of wrinkles that actually really work well when Jack Layne is running the offense. And now there's all these little extra side pieces that can be just put in when needed. It really feels like that could be on the table here, because honestly, the Rocco Coke experiment was great tonight. 37 yards and a touchdown. Seemed like every time he went in, he made the first down or whatever it was that he needed to do, he did it. And Bryan, 38 points. Just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. This offense was humming. So now get healthy, get a week off, come back, finish the last 3 games strong, go 9-3. Sky's the limit.
Yeah. I think we need to let people call tonight, like Dane Moon saying way past my bedtime. Nighty night, go Vandals. Taylor Cash did the same thing. Sean Kramer instructing us old dudes to get to bed. Thanks to the live listeners who hung around, and hey, patreon.com/Tubs of the Club. Even at the home game, the discussion is just humming. Road games, it's long and in a good way, and just does not stop. And even a home game, it's still going pretty wild. So yeah, patreon.com/Tubs of the Club. Support the show. Costs less than a cup of coffee a month. Unless you want to give more, we don't say no.
With that said, gentlemen and lady, because I'm guessing there's probably not ladies listening to the show. Hopefully there are. Gentlemen and lady or ladies, it's time. Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals. Go Vandals. Go Vandals.